Welcome back to the Jen's Treasure. Today we're gonna do another ring video. What we're gonna do is take this malachite bead, which by the way, malachite is my favorite stone. Although this camera doesn't quite do it justice. That's all right. So we're gonna take that bead, and then we also have our flat pair of pliers, which have the clips down below, and then the rounded needle nose pliers, as well as two identical in length 20 gauge wires, copper, I guess about a hand's length is sufficient. I always, first rule of wire wrapping with me is that I always overestimate the amount of wire that I need. I also have about an arm plus a chest's length of the 24 gauge copper wire. Now to begin, what we're gonna do is kiss the two tips of that 24 gauge wire together and zip tie all the way down to the other end, and we get that loop. Give me just one moment. I see the cat is waiting at the door and wants to get let out. Take care of that now, then have him yelling at us every 5 seconds during the video. All right, so first step, yep, we did that, kiss the tips and then zipped all the way down to the other end, got this loop. Now what we're gonna do is take both of our 20 gauge wires, line them up with each other, and then we're just gonna thread both of them through that loop of the 24 gauge wire. We're gonna kind of just eyeball what appears to be the middle, so about there, and we'll pinch down with our pointer finger and thumb, pinching on all three wires, holding it all together, and then we'll spread apart the 24 gauge wire so you can see it's now spread in the right and the left. What we're gonna do is, it doesn't really matter which side you start with. I'll just choose the left because I'm left-handed. And we just start coiling around the two wires, joining them together. So you can see my coils, I've been wire wrapping for like 9 years. So I'm pretty good at getting my coils nice and tight. You'll notice that one on the end though, where I started, you can see clearly there's like a big gap right there. So here's the trick. You pinch down with your pointer and thumb on both ends of the 20 gauge wire, and then push all 4 fingers in together. And you see that? Voila. You're gonna have like a little crease there or a little bump, which if that's really important that you don't have that, you can take your flats and kind of just pinch down and massage on that to take care of it at least a little bit. But honestly, it's not super important. What is important is that your coils are tight, and these are some tight coils. So with that, what we're gonna do is take our flat pliers and see how I'm gonna pinch down on the coiled portion, and then that gives me a little bit of extra space to be able, or like as opposed to using my human fingers, I get better grip with here, better traction, and I'm able to continue coiling at a much faster rate. Also, the fingers of the flats, or the pliers, they're also skinnier than my bulky human fingers, so it also gives me more room to get in there. As you can see with this finger, it's it gives me better visual space. It's like I'm able to breathe better, if you know what I mean. It's like the difference between a messy and a clean room, you know what I mean? You have that breathing space. So every so often, we'll just scoot the pliers over once we've coiled a good amount, and then we pinch down, reapply it, kind of going a little bit fast because this is it's an easy task, but it's pretty time consuming to get this, the first few steps here. So if you notice, I'm just taking the pliers and just like kind of massaging, pinching down and flattening, making sure that these two wires stay parallel to each other rather than getting twisted like that. So now we're gonna switch our wrap around. So this was the side that I was wrapping on going out that way, but I just reversed it. So now we've switched sides. It's gonna look the same from the camera's perspective, but basically I just rotated the wires. Like I said, I'm left-handed, so it's easier for me to get this done with my left hand and just use my right hand as an anchor with the pliers, holding everything in place while my left hand does all the magic work. So now we can see, actually there's one more tool, which luckily I have my bag right here, so I'm just gonna grab my tool real quick. And I should actually know the name of this tool. I think it's just ring sizer, but basically that's what it is. It's like this wand. You'll see. This is my ring sizer, so you can see it's numbered, and it's pretty narrow at the tip, and then it gets wider and wider, hence the numbers signifying like different ring sizes. So for example, the American finger, Americans are fat, American average is 10, which is huge in my opinion. No offense to anybody who has 10 plus inch fingers, I apologize. I'm just saying, I think Americans are generally have bigger fingers. That's all I'm trying to say. For me, I think I'm like a 8. Remember we did this last time and I guessed 7, and I was like definitely not fitting into a 7. Anyways, we're gonna go for, let's go for an 8 today. So basically we have that red number, the 8 right there. And what we're gonna do is take our wire and line it up on the rounded portion, because it's better to start on the rounded portion as opposed to right in the middle here. Because if you look, you can see, oh, that's flat, and that will kind of mess up the rounded shape of the ring. So we'll start with the rounded portion as we kind of curl around on that red 8. And what we want to do is create our wireframe to kind of give that half pipe look. And it also gives us an idea of how much further we need to go. So from here, I'll just skip the pliers for right now. I think now that the wires, the 20 gauge wires have been bent, I can use my human fingers. Have a little bit more traction. So then, and if you ever want to know, okay, so like I've been wrapping on this side for a while, but how about this side? How do I know what's balanced? Well, you pull them, and then as you can see, this one is shorter than this one, which means I've done more coils on this wire to eat up the length. So I'm just gonna switch now to this side just to get that balanced out. And then, so once again, back at it with the coils. Also, you wanna make sure, so what I just did right there, if you look closely, what happened is I was coiling outwards this way, and then on that last one, it actually went reverse and coiled in that direction, and now it's like kind of trying to correct itself. So if you catch something like that, and I'll go a few more coils so you can really notice the difference. Now you see that the quick, easy way to fix that is to just reverse, undo your coils all the way until you've erased that mistake, and then correctly align your wire to continue to do proper coils henceforth. So this is my technique. I'll slow it down a little bit, so I just kind of like windmill around, and then I use my middle finger here as like a pull or to create tension on the wire, where my thumb and my finger are just kind of like holding the wire in place or guiding it. And then so in slow motion it looks like that, but you'll notice my pointer finger will also slide up to guide the wire. It goes back and forth like this, so like that. And the reason that my finger slides up is, one, to keep the coils tight, but two, to make sure that everything is all properly in alignment so that it looks like a sound structure, minus that little niche in the beginning, because I did that for an example. But anyways, it looks pretty good all in all together. I would say we're ready here for the next step, and the next step is just going to be splitting the hairs. Now it's really important. You'll notice the coil comes around, and as it wrapped around and then comes underneath, this is where you want it, as opposed to over here. Let's see if I can explain the difference. So the difference is, this one, for the next wrap, it's going to come under, whereas if you go backwards to where we had it, and now you're continuing the coil, it's coming up. And it's really important that you want it to be on coming up. So you come up, and then you actually weave in between the two wires, come around the outside of that far wire, and then back in between. You're doing like a figure 8. Now, the reason why I was saying it's really important to have the wire start on the come up is so that when we finish right here, actually I'll do one more, so that when we finish, we're coming up. And this way, after we do like 2, 3, or 4 coils on just the one arm, now that we have the wire positioned properly coming up, it's going to be better for when the bead comes through and threads that tip and slides all the way down to the bead. The bead will now be resting on top of these two as opposed to underneath. That's the difference. And I would say it's, over the years, I think it's just, you're setting yourself up for success that way. It's not like super important, I suppose, or the end of the world, because you'll be able to work around it if you don't do that. But I recommend it's just a pro tip that makes the whole operation pretty clean. So now what we did is, on both sides we did 3 figure 8s. So when I say figure 8, there's the figure 8, you see it? So we did 3 figure 8s in between both wires, and then we come out and we do, what did we do, 3 or 4? I think it was 4 coils on just the one single side. And now it's the same thing. The wire has finished coming up. So now it's kind of, I always think of this as like a what do they call those, drawbridge or something, where the bridge splits, and this is where the bridge comes down and reunites. And so what we want to do is have it it's not parallel, but kind of like mirroring itself. So if this of these 2 fingers, if this is the one that folds in between these 2 fingers, then the reverse would mean that it's this one. Did I do that right? Yeah. So it'll look like this. You want to make sure that when you're folding your wires over each other, that it's all symmetrically sound. Which, unfortunately, I don't know. Oh, I see what happened. Okay, so I coiled on this end, and if you notice, now I have 2 coils on the tops, and that's not symmetrical. So what I missed, actually, so I have to uncoil these 3 or 4 single-sided coils, and then come back around, and then bring it back down over to this side. Because it's important that if we have coils up here, the symmetry is coils over here. So we're gonna get those single coils busted out real quick. And how we looking? I see it's a little janky right there. And if I were a perfectionist, which I'm not, I'd probably go back and fix that. But I think that it's not going to be detrimental for the tutorial video. So now we're ready to take our wire tips of that 24 gauge wire and thread the bead through that malachite bead, and then we're going to take the other end and then thread it through the reverse. So now when you have both tip ends, you just pull them, and you want to make sure that when you pull it all the way through, that the bead rests in the middle, so in between all of these wires, rather than coming around the outside or the outside of these two wires. I think it kind of naturally gravitates towards wanting to weave on the outside. You just want to make sure that the bead is in the middle, in the center. You pull it tight, you bring these 20 gauge tips or arms, wire arms. I'm pulling with a good amount of tension on here, and you want to make sure that tension is engaged as you do the next step, which is taking the wire, threading it through so it goes over, around, and then in between the bead and these two wires. So when you pull tight, it anchors the bead right here. Now we want to make sure that, again, maintaining the tension on this wire to not let it go loose. We're going to do the same thing, threading through. And we also, when we thread, we want to make sure that we come around and come underneath this wire that we started with on both sides. So that way, when we continue the thread, I'll have to use my pliers fingers to really show you what I'm saying. So this is the wire, the first one, and then the wrap, it came above this one, or in reverse, if we start at the top, it's coming down. And the idea is that our coils now are going to come up along this way and then down along that way. So I'll show you what that looks like now. So we thread it through, keep on threading it through, and then guess what? We're going to thread it through. And then one more time before we thread it through, before we switch over to the other side. You'll never guess what's going to happen now. We're going to take this wire and thread it through, pull it tight, keep our coils tight, and then thread it through. One more time. We're going to thread that through. And just for good measure, why not? We'll just thread it through one time. So now you can kind of understand what I mean about the coils working their way up and then working their way down. Now is kind of where we're looking at the finish and getting an idea of how do we want to style our finish. For me, I am getting better at estimating the amount of wire that I need. So my 20 gauge arms of wire are pretty short. They're kind of exactly where I like to have them. If I wanted to have like a more stylish finish and more stuff to see, I would have longer arms. But in this case, what I'll probably do is end up just chopping off. And as you can see, I'm threading it through still as I'm talking, because you want to thread it through a good amount. So as I thread it through, I'll continue telling you about the style finish with the arms. My intention for this specific ring is to not have a lot of excess stuff. So I'll be clipping off, even though these short arms are already pretty stubby, I'm gonna make them extra stubby. So for this, what we're gonna do is pay attention to of these two wires. So this wire and this wire. This one is the one that's on top. So we're gonna keep that, we're gonna just bend it up a little bit, and then on the back side, it's this wire is on the bottom. So what we're gonna do is actually, with our clippers, clip off to where there's just a very short stub. Then we're gonna take our rounded plier fingers, get that wire out of the way for you, and then we're gonna pinch down tip of the wires to the tip of the plier and curl a little hook. So you see that hook in there? And then we'll do the same thing to the other side, assuming that, yep, this one, see how it's coming out on the bottom? There's the top wire, which is the one that's coiled, and then the bottom wire. So we'll do the same thing, clip that, and then tip of the pliers, tip of the wire, pinch and curl a hook. So now you can see there's that hook there, and then on the reverse, it's underneath there. So we're continuing that, it's the continuity of symmetry. Now with these other ones, you'll notice with all that work, it's kind of come undone. So we'll just kind of pull these together. Didn't really do much actually. So if you didn't understand, don't worry about it. Didn't really make any significant difference. Anyways, so what we're gonna do is take these stubby arms and then wrap them around the crystal like that. What I'm gonna do is push the crystal up so it pokes through the top a little bit more instead of being kind of hanging out in the middle, because you want the crystal to be what shows. So it's important that it protrudes up through all the wire work. So from here, now we are ready to, what we've been doing with this wire, I'll show you again with the fingers here. So that with this wire, you'll notice what it's been doing is coiling these two wires together. Now we're gonna get a third wire, which is this one involved. So when we thread it through, it'll come around all three wires and then weave it through again. If you can, you'll notice probably towards the end it's going to be a little tight to get the that wire woven through in between the bead, because the bead's getting pretty tight right now. But it just takes a little patience. Goodness, it's like trying to shimmy a janky car to turn the engine on. Shimmy the keys. All right, so we've got two, and I'll stop with two. I'm content with that. And then with that very tip end, we're just gonna curl it so that it's tucked away, no pokey tips are hanging out. And you know what we'll do is we'll thread, for a little style finish, we'll thread it through just the two. So just the bottom wire and then the top wire, which is that curled hook wire. So we're gonna thread it through both of those, skipping that middle wire, which is the one that hugs the bead, this wire right here. So we're skipping that wire and going back to just wrapping two wires, but it's a different two wires. And then, let's see, do we have room? We have room, so I'm just gonna thread it through. I think when we coil two wires together, it's always best to have at least two coils. I just think it's more of a better style or look. So you can see there's two and two, as opposed to just leaving it with one. One, for some reason, to me, it just looks sloppy. And it also, if you have a sensitive touch and your finger brushes it, it's a lot more noticeable that there's like, oh, there's just one lone wire. It's kind of like a mistake or something. Kind of like if there was like one bump in all these coils, you would notice it. It's kind of like that same thing. So now we're just using up the rest of this wire to coil around that frame wire, which we've reached the bottom now. So we'll just clip off all the excess. So you can see here, now we have this wire where the split happens. There's this wire which is coiled, and then this wire just got coiled as well. we'll go ahead and curl the very tip of that wire so there's no pokey tips hanging out. Right, good. And then now we're gonna do the same thing where we thread it through on the other end, all 3 wires. So it's 1, 2, and 3. So we're gonna thread all 3 of those wires in between. And we're having the same little issue here. I guess I pulled a little too tight on the bead or something. But that's good. Honestly, I would prefer to have this be my challenge as opposed to, because it looks good. It looks good and clean. And I'd rather have this than some kind of sloppy finish. So I'm trying to get in there. I wouldn't be surprised if like Amazon or something has some kind of tool to like make this easier. I don't know, maybe not. But I'm not too invested in trying to do that. I enjoy more of like just the skill with my hands. Goodness gracious. There we go. So what I did right there is I took my thumbnail and pulled down on this wire, and it created a little bit more of a gap there, so I should be able to thread through easily now. There we go. And we just pull it through. Remember, we want to do, oh, jerk. I missed that 3rd wire, so now I have to do it again. Threading through. Got it. Okay, and then I'm just gonna use those pliers, pull that out a little bit, make sure I get all 3 wires this time. Good. And then this right here, what I'm doing, working it back and forth, that kind of just like tightens up the coils. It's a good little technique. And then let's see if we can thread it through one more time. One more time. You know that song? Daft Punk. It's a good one. When I was a kid, I had a French foreign exchange student live with my family. He's the one who introduced me to Daft Punk. I thought it was like only Europeans. And I was like, wow, they really listen to their own style of music. Which of course is not the case, but it was funny at the time thinking that. I just hadn't heard it. This is quite a challenge, but it's worth it. There we go. Good, the hard part is over and we're almost done. So now I've got my 2 coils there. I'll just pinch them together to tighten it up. And then now I'm only gonna use these 2 to get coiled together, skipping this middle one, just like I did on the other side. And if you might have noticed what I did differently last time with the other side was that I curled that hook before I did the coils, which I decided it's easier this way. So now I'm gonna get that hook curled, make sure that push it down there so it's not gonna get caught on anything. There's no pokey tips. And then for that final finish is to coil just this one last wire and I did not wrap that the right way. So I went over and through instead of under and through. Which that is one of those things where if you make that mistake, it's noticeable. So now we're gonna thread under and through, and then we'll just thread all the way down until this wire, which is exposed, is gonna be covered up in more coils. And once that's done, we'll clip off the excess, and that will be the completion of this ring. So it looks like one more. Yep, and then now we can clip off the excess and just tuck that little wire away. Boom. So there you have it. And then the final step, if you notice, if you finish a ring and you notice like, oh, that's not perfectly round, and you have a ring sizer, go ahead and just drop it on one more time. Oh my gosh, and guess what? It's for an American finger, size 11. All right, thank you.